there's one thing that we wanted to make mention of. As Bryce talked about, Shaken and Stir has not been yet adopted across the board, and as a result, some of the PACE membership have been seeing lags within or contact decreases with their contacts, and a lot of it has to do with the call labeling, and blocking. PACE actually started a Communications Protection Coalition, and what that did is it convened a meeting of stakeholders, which included carriers, analytic companies, app developers, trade associations, and regulators. Everybody was able to set their side of the story during that time, so there was no wrong assumptions. The meeting was actually very well attended. It happened on Wednesday, September 20th, the day after the PACE Washington Summit concluded. Right now, the next steps that have already been set is there's a working document of best practices that was generated for mitigating robocall processing impacts on wanted legitimate communications. We will also be determining the date for the next coalition meeting, which will be in January of 2018. If you would like any more information related to the CPC at PACE, you can visit our website at paceassociation.org, or you can contact me directly, and my contact information is at the bottom of that screen. And so now we will go ahead and go into the different questions that we have. So the first one that I'm going to ask is, what is the forum where the network-to-network standards are being worked out, Bryce?
Yeah, hi, this is Gary Richenacker from iconectiv. Just wanted to state that to answer the question directly, it's in the ATA-SIP forum IP NNI for the network-to-network interface. That's where the specifications are being developed, not only for the Stir Shaken, which includes the authentication, the verification, and the certificate management or certification.
All right, great. The next question that I have is, how quickly will the standards be adopted by service providers?
Yeah, hi, this is Bryce McWhorter speaking. You know, we are seeing a lot of activity from service providers, but we believe at this point that Q3 would be probably the earliest where we will see production adoption by service providers. We've seen RFPs, we've seen various labs, especially from those operators participating in the standards work. But you know, there are changes to SIP for this to work, and so vendors have to deploy those changes, have to be tested in labs. So we're probably thinking end of next year, Q3, Q4, but before we see the first service providers implement the framework. Thanks.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, how many carriers have deployed it today?
Hi, this is Gary Richenacker. I think to set the context for that question, being that this is being worked and the standards and specifications are being developed as we speak, it's safe to say that any kind of production has not been deployed in the network, as Bryce has said. It's probably going to be in the third quarter of next year. However, to be ready for that, there is a ATIS test bed where carriers are coming to test and interoperate between each other, and that's service providers and vendors to meet the specifications, because that would be one of the criteria as well. In addition, we know some providers are doing peer-to-peer kind of testing between themselves. So there's a bunch of industry activity now in anticipation of being deployed or in production by the third quarter. So to answer the question, really, it hasn't been deployed. The specifications are brand new, but a lot of the industry, the vendors, the service providers are working towards doing the testing to be ready for implementation and deployment in 2018. Thank you.
That kind of leads into the next question that I see is, how can someone tell if their service provider is able to participate in the signing and attestation of calls? Excuse me.
Hi, this is Bryce. So currently, the only way to know will be to speak with your service provider directly. In the near future, the industry may appoint a policy administrator which would provide tokens or enable the certificate authorities that help the service providers both sign and authenticate the calls. This entity, there may be a way to validate whether a service provider can participate or not through that entity. But as of right now, our recommendation would be to be vocal and to speak with your service provider and make sure that you're not left out.
And Bryce, you might have already answered this, or you might have already talked about this too, but will they need to upgrade their hardware or software?
Yeah, one of the things I think it was mentioned in one of the first questions about modifications to like either software, hardware, and SIP signaling. Those things all needed to be done really in conjunction for any kind of deployment. I mean, some of the capabilities in SIP signaling to add additional header information, that's in the SIP signaling itself. In addition, then, the hardware vendors have to accommodate the inclusion of these new SIP fields, new SIP headers. And the service providers actually, from a software perspective, for the authentication and verification, probably need to add some capability, probably through the deployment of some additional servers with the software capability to enable that functionality. So it's not just a total, plug and play kind of thing. There are things that, these different components need to work together. So it's not just a single change, it's multiple changes in order to enable this capability.
All right. Mitch, I just lost my connectivity. Is there another question that we needed to ask?
Yes. There was one more question we wanted to ask is it mandatory for our direct peering carrier to meet this new framework, or can it be any carrier upstream?
So that's a very good question. It's not mandatory, but the way the spec is currently written, this is really important, especially for PACE members, anyone generating calls to reach a consumer or to launch a campaign. If the peering partner or the carrier that you originate the call to cannot give you an A-level attestation, meaning that they can validate that, the highest level attestation where they can validate that they have a direct relationship with you, the originator, and that they can verify that that telephone number belongs to you, they cannot truly differentiate your call from other entities that may originate calls to that peering partner or wholesale carrier that are not that do not have the right to use the ANI that they're using. So let me run through that a little bit. So if an overseas carrier is originating calls to a wholesale carrier and that call gets a gateway level attestation, so we'll say that's the lowest level of attestation, and you send your call to a service provider who then sends it to another service provider and you get that same lowest level of attestation, you look the same as someone who could potentially be non-compliant or even illegally spoofing an ANI, using an ANI that they do not own. And that's, once this framework is deployed, that's a position that you do not want to be in. You want to make sure that the consumer, when they receive that call, the subscriber, they can see that you have the right to use that ANI and that the originating service provider can verify or validate who you are. Now, what is unclear at this point in the spec is if you are using an aggregator or an over-the-top provider or someone like this, they may be able to get a sub-certificate from an OCN, or there may be a way in the future to further to get an A-level attestation assigned to by non-OCNs. We currently haven't defined that. So when we say speak with your service providers, understand what their capabilities are, it's really, really important to know if they will be able to get you the highest level of attestation. It's going to be really important, and we are suggesting early adoption for companies that depend on communicating with subscribers or consumers.
Mitchell, are there any other questions that we have?
That's it for now.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I would like to thank Bryce and the rest of the team at iconectiv for this very informative webinar. As I said previously, the recording of the webinar will be available on the PACE website as well as on the iconectiv website in just a day or two. And as a reminder, the 2018 PACE Convention and Expo, that's going to be held April 15th through the 18th at the Chateau Elan in Brazelton, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. The early bird and hotel registration is now available. You can visit our website for further details to register or to book your hotel. We hope to see you all at another PACE webinar, a national or a chapter event very soon. Thank you all so much for your time today and have a great rest of the day. Bye.